The first thing we need to do is let's get the values from the submitted form. So values equals to $_post, and then of course it's inside of data property with a key of property of the form data. So of course we're gonna have to select form data from post. Actually, sorry, not error container, form data. Okay, and then we're gonna have to create a function that's says valid, that's called validate, just to keep things precise and maintainable. So next, that has to accept two parameters. One is values, or let's say, yeah, that's values here, and the second parameter is validation rules of rules. All right, so let's call it let's actually create the validation rules up here. So let's say rules equal to an array. So the way it works is we're gonna have keys for each element that we want to validate. In this case, name, and the rules we're gonna write it soon. So we want to validate name, email, and then we want to validate password. Okay, so the validation rules for name is just required. That's all we need. We just wanted something to exist there, and the validation rule for email is required as well, and the one for password is required. But email and password are a bit special in that we're gonna add many rules. So the way you add rules is just separate them by pipes like this. Okay, if you've done Laravel before, you know that it has a similar way of accepting validation rules, right? So it's required, and it should be an email as well, and for password as well, it's required, and it should have a min length of 3. That's left to you, whatever you want to put there. But for this tutorial, let's use 3, and a max length of 10. Okay, so right down here, let's just say results equal to, so let's call validate, and then we're going to pass in values. Okay, so next we're going to pass in rules. We're going to do validation inside here, and then after we've got the results, what we want to do is we want to echo JSON encode. Basically, we want to get this array here. This results will be an array, and the result will be in the format of an array, which the first element is going to be true or false based on the validation passes, and the other one will be in the format of name and a list of validation errors here, like as shown on the other page. And there's going to be another property if any errors occurred for email. That is, if any errors didn't, or no errors occurred for email, then it's just going to be an empty array. For example, for password, if password passes but the others didn't, we're going to get a property in this format, so it's just going to be an empty array. Okay, so this is what is going to be the format of results. So we want to convert that into a JSON string and then echo it out, so that the front-end framework here, or plugin that is, gets it in the Ajax success callback. All right, so let's do JSON encode and then results, and then yeah, so now let's write the validate function. We're gonna have to create two properties, error, and it's going to be an empty array. Okay, so next we're gonna have to create another property called valid. It's a variable actually, so, and the default value will be true, so it's going to be valid by default. Okay, so next let's loop over the rules argument that's been passed here. So let's do for each rules as key, which is the form key, of course, because these are the form keys. So if you're familiar with how for each works, it's going to go over key value. All right, so we have form key, and then now we have rule. So what we want to do is we want to get each individual rule. Okay, so in this case, required email, required min 3, max 10. Okay, so let's do split rule equals to explode, and we want to split that using this delimiter here. Okay, because that's the separator, right? So the second argument will be actually the rule itself. So we're saying for each rules as rule, so let's pass in rule, right? So that's going to give us an array for each of these, right? So that's the first level for each. So next, let's do set errors for each of the form elements here, names. All right, so let's do errors, and then we're gonna say form key is equal to an empty array. All right, so next let's do let's loop over the split rule. Basically, since we have an array which is required an email, and another array which is just required, and a third one which is just required min and then max of 10. Okay, so in the first loop, let's do for each, and then let's do split rule. Let's actually put an s here so that's easier for us. So split rules are split rule. Okay,